All right, hopefully everybody at home can hear me. If not, it's Adam's fault. But So again, my name's Lindsey Pickard. I'm the founder of Amelia's Native Wildflowers. When I moved here in 2021, I was kind of culture shocked at the alarming habitat destruction. It's one thing reading about it, coming from a small town in Massachusetts, really only read about it in, ecology books, and you know the impacts of it, but then to come here and see it firsthand, seeing the acres and acres and acres of plants and wildlife habitats just being destroyed and then replanted with non-native boxwoods, it's really alarming. So I knew it was part of the problem. I bought an HOA. I am a newcomer to Florida, right? Everybody says go back home, but I'm here, so I wanted to change my backyard into a native wildlife habitat. That became my number one goal. I started researching as much as I could, still learning every single day. Really want it to be a safe haven. And of course, the obstacles that I faced is, where do you get native plants? I couldn't find any. I'm sure you've all felt the struggle, so I decided to grow my own. And I killed a lot. Luckily, I grew more than I killed, but I did kill a lot. So here we are today at Amelia's Native Wildflowers to support my addiction of trying to grow plants. I really want to educate the public about transforming their yards to native wildlife habitats. The small changes they can make such a large impact, and to make natives accessible. And if I can do it, everybody here can do it too. And I urge you to try and collect your own seeds. So I'm excited to talk about this today. We're going to learn how to identify, harvest, clean, and store seeds, and some tips and tricks for germination. And there's going to be some things, it's a big topic. So if there's anything that I missed, please feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. I'm happy to have the discussion. All right, so some rules of engagement. You need permission. So either that's from the landowner, or if you want to go to a state or federal park, then oftentimes you need a permit to collect seeds. Some off-limit areas include aquatic plants. You cannot take aquatic plants. Environmentally sensitive areas or sites that have a lot of invasives, and then if an invasive seed gets into your bunch and you give it away, you know what can happen. The general rule of thumb from the USDA, now this is for mass collecting. This doesn't really apply to the home gardener, but I figured it would be worth mentioning. They recommend 5 collection sites about a half mile to a mile apart. Large numbers of sites might be required, or it's often recommended just to avoid genetic inbreeding, self-pollination and things like that. 30 to 50 or more plants is optimal, but I mean, that's a lot of plants in our backyard. So again, those are just for mass scale collecting. And a really good golden rule to go by is, when you are collecting, only collect 10% or less, leave the rest for birds and for future generations. All right, so go outside and find a flower. You see a flower that you want, you identify it's native, and you really want to start looking at the growth conditions that flower's in. That's my best recommendation. Is like, I love that plant, I'd love to harvest the seeds from it and grow it. Look what's around it. Notice other companion plants that I might be growing with, and the soil and the sunlight. Some helpful resources to help you identify the plant. All of you guys, right? The members, I know Mike, I ask him a lot of questions about what is native. And iNaturalist is great, because then there is a log of where native plants are. So it just becomes a resource that everybody can use. I do like Picture This. It's another app that you can get. It's probably like 75% accurate. It'll get you going on the right track. I put Facebook group members, but some stars on there. There's a lot of bad information, but there's also a lot of smart people that you can get in touch with. So take what you hear on Facebook with a grain of salt. But again, get you going in the right direction. So seeds come in very many different shapes and styles, and pods and nuts, and there's winged seeds, and they come in all different colors too. So for example, this is the moonflower seed pod, and really easy to distinguish when it's about to pop open. You don't have to remember all types, just know it might be different from the flower that you had. And so here's some more examples, different seed pods and capsules. Wait and watch for that flower to go to seed, and then wait for the seeds to ripen. When it comes to collection, you might have a big window, or you might have a small window with a couple days. If it's an exploding seed head, then you really want to check on that daily. A rough guide is about 2 months after flowering, then the seeds should be ripe, but it's very generic. That's not an ultimate truth. Your color change is going to be a good indicator. So from green to brown, that's usually ready. If it still has fleshy material on it, it's usually not ready. But again, these are just generalities. When you identify your plant, the research is going to begin. If it's one that you're really passionate about and you want to grow, you're going to start learning about that plant. So we're going to move on to harvesting. Again, that 10% rule, try to leave 10% for wildlife. And you want to go ahead and start harvesting when it's dry. We haven't had rain in a little while. This is a really good time to start collecting those spring seeds because humidity and moisture is going to kill your seeds. So make sure it's dry. You can snip the seed stalks into paper bags or organza bags, which I'll talk about. Don't be like me, record the plant name when you do it. Don't think I'm going to remember it because, anyway. A good thing to do too is record the growing conditions. I know I had mentioned that before, but with the name, say, it was growing in part sun, it was growing in moist conditions, or whatever sticks out to you. So some different methods for harvesting seeds. You can just strip the stalks, clip the stems, like I said. For pods and cones, just allow them to dry, crush them, and they'll usually pop out for you. Fleshy fruits and berries, you're gonna have to mash them, and we'll go over that a little more in depth, and then get the seeds to dry after you wash them. Again, exploding seed heads, kind of difficult. You gotta check them daily or just place a bag over them and shake it. Organza bag. Nuts, put a tarp down, shake the branch, and then gather your nuts. This is what I was saying, the organza bag. They're relatively cheap to get them offline on Amazon. This is $5 for a 50 pack. I love these. I'm a lazy gardener, and this is a picture of a thistle in my yard. I need to put more bags on because it's a great pollinator plant, but I don't need 3,000 thistles. So I'll go and cover them with the organza bag. It allows airflow. It's really great too if you're a vegetable gardener, because then you can put it over your fruits to deter slugs and different pests. But it's really nice after it's been on the stalk. When you remember to go grab it, you can just cut it and leave it to dry in the bag, which is nice. So there's no additional steps. All right, so we talked about identifying the seeds. Now we've harvested them. Anyone spot the seeds? See if it's a click. Oh, it worked, look at that. So they can be really small. My recommendation is, if you're not sure what the seeds look like or where they're coming from, and you've taken a flower head, is put it on a plate, break it open, and just start examining. Usually the seeds will stick out because they'll be much tougher and harder than the rest of the dried plant material. Cleaning seeds. I hope that was a little bit bigger up there. Good. So again, we'll talk about the dry seeds and then the wet seeds, like the berries. So the process for cleaning the seeds, for dry seeds, you're going to let them dry, go through a process called threshing, then we'll screen them, and then winnow. And you'll repeat that as much as you want, or as much as you need, I should say. You can create fancy contraptions like the solar dryer, which I thought was really fascinating, or the one with the screens and the box fan there. That would be great. Leave them in your garage if you have that many, or you could be like me and just put them on your counter for months and drive everybody nuts. But that's pretty much it. You just let them dry, because again, moisture will be the death of your seeds. The process of threshing, very simple, straightforward. You're just trying to remove those seeds from the rest of the plant material. You can do that by rubbing by hand, or this gentleman here, he's flailing and stomping on his seeds. So whatever works for you, just try. It's that first step of getting the plant material off your seeds. The next step is screening. You can purchase these screens and you can make them, or you could not even use them at all and just keep the flower litter, the chaff, as organic matter in with your seeds. Just make sure they're dry. But if you want to go that extra step, go ahead and screen them. The screens have different sizes, and so different materials will fall through. The scalping as well, it's larger buckets or larger crates with different sizes, so it's just a way of separating the materials. Winnowing is an ancient technique that has been used since we started harvesting seeds, and it's just using air. Now, this will work for heavier seeds, kind of like partridge pea and things like that. If you have seeds that are blown out by the wind, kind of, if you think of thistle, for instance, this wouldn't work. They would go right where the fan points them or the air points them. But the idea is that you transfer seeds from one spot to the other, allowing wind to pass through, and that'll help get rid of a lot of the chaff. All right, cleaning seeds with wet seeds. This is a little more involved, not as straightforward. The process begins with extraction, then either a light soak or fermentation, a decanting process, a rinse, and a dry. So for the extraction, you're going to want to mash these seeds and break that fleshy exterior off of the seed. Don't worry about hurting the seed. Usually that fleshy material is on the outside of it, so it protects it going through an animal's digestive system. So you don't have to be so worried about harming the seed during this process. You really just want to get off that fleshy material so that way you don't get any fungus or disease or mold happening. And also to prevent fungus and molds, you will start to ferment it. So what you do is you soak the seeds. This, again, it dissolves the coating around the seed that protects it going through the stomach acid of different animals. And that gelatinous coat actually prohibits seeds from germinating. So you really do need to get rid of it. Doing the fermenting process breaks down pulp, and it makes it easier to separate, destroys disease. Usually takes about like 1 to 3 days. You stir it twice. When you see the mold forming, that's when you start decanting. And that's simply just kind of rinsing. So you use the water to clean and separate the seeds from the fermentation mix, and then you pour off the debris, and you'll start to and let it settle, and you start to get this clear mixture. So this might take a couple of processes to get a clear mixture. But then after that, you do a final rinse, place it out on a screen. Drying is key when we're harvesting and cleaning seeds. Make sure they are dry. Storage. Now, this is what I feel like everybody should lock in their head is it's 45 degrees to 55 degrees Fahrenheit and relative humidity. I went to the native seed restoration conference last week, and Ernest Seed, I don't know if you're familiar with them, and Roundstone Seed, they're big producers of seed. They went and talked, and this is what they keep their giant warehouses at. So we can take a lesson. If they can keep seed alive, so can we. So follow that guide. And they should remain viable for many years. Best practices, though, to go ahead and use them within a year, because depending on the species, remember, you've already researched this with your plant, depending on the species, viability can go down within a week, or, it's very species dependent. Best to mimic natural cycles and plant them right away. If you're going to sow outside or in pots outside, just let it go through the natural cold dips and high temperatures. Just try to keep it away from pouring rain on top of it. I mean, some rain's great, don't get me wrong, but you don't want anything to wash your seeds away. And then there are some seeds that thrive, like Kunti, for instance. They need an after ripening process, so you shouldn't plant them right away. And some you should not let dry out. Again, so it gets very specific, so do your research. Walnuts, oaks, magnolias, they need to have some moisture in their seed to be able to germinate. Again, humidity, high temps, deteriorates your seeds very quickly. If you want to put your seeds in the fridge, I recommend, like, paper's king. Paper is breathable, it doesn't trap in moisture. But if you're going to put them in the fridge where it can be moist and the humidity fluctuates, put the paper seed packet in an airtight container. You can use a definite pack. I usually save them when they come out of my kids' toys or whatever it is, but you want cool temps and darkness. Some issues with your seeds that might come up that maybe you didn't think of previously is that it is pretty exhausting for plants to produce seeds every year. So some years you might have a really good seed, some years you might not. And that could be due to weather patterns, if there was a drought, or if there was a sudden frost. I know that damages a lot of plants. If they have time to acclimate as the temperature slowly reduces, then it's usually not so stunning from them. Also, you may need a male and female to have live seeds. So again, this is where that research comes in, if it's that seed that you really want to grow. All right, moving right along, we have germination. So the best time to start your wildflower seeds, really September. You can always go to January. The Florida Wildflower Foundation recommends till the end of November, but you can, especially if it's still warm in December, like I'm talking above 75, you can wait all the way until January until you get that cold, because seeds you're trying to mimic nature, and they have different responses to cold temperature because we do have a little bit of a winter. It gets down to 55 degrees or so. So they need those chemical signals to go ahead and germinate. And if you're putting in the effort of collecting them and germinating them, give yourself the best chance for success. Think like a plant too. Annuals, usually the majority of the time of year, their mission is to just grow and produce seed, grow and produce seed. And so like in tropical sage, that will just keep going all year. And patience. Patience, patience, patience. I've had seeds started in January that are now just coming up. Temperature of the soil is very closely related to germination rates. I have some that had germinated right away and they have been potted and so on, and then the rest of the batch is now just popping up. And they do that evolutionary to protect themselves in case there was, I don't know, weather patterns or some kind of insect that just came and wiped them all out. At least they didn't come up at all the same time. So bring your patience. It could take a couple of weeks or it could take a couple of months for your seeds to start growing. Don't give up on them. Just be patient. Again, it comes back to that research of their life cycles and their habitat. And what else did we not cover? The light some seeds, really small, fine seeds, usually that are blown by wind, 8 out of 10 times they need light to germinate. A tip that I do is usually I'll put them on top of the soil and I'll add a fine vermiculite over the top, and that just helps retain moisture and it stops your seeds from blowing away. So, little tip for you. And there's a couple of processes that seeds will probably need, especially native plant seeds. So there's scarification and stratification. Those are the big ones. Scarification is really just scarring the seed. You're trying to allow water to enter into the seeds that can start the germination process. And you can do that with sandpaper, rub it on a rock, however it works for you. You can use hot water. There's been some conflicting, as I've read, 95 degrees to 110 degrees, even more just after boiling. Let it cool down for a second and then do it. I just have a water purifier and I hit the hot water and that water gets hot. So that's worked really great. There's acidic treatments. You can use sulfuric acid or gibberellic acid. Stratification, that is a condition that mimics winter, and that's all you're doing in your fridge. It's just mimicking winter. I like to put them in some sand and then make sure the sand's damp, stick them in your fridge for a couple of weeks to maybe a couple of months. I know ironweed takes a long time, whereas milkweed, I can start having that germinate within 3 weeks. So know your plant. If not, have fun with it. And also, you may need to inoculate legumes. I can never say it right. So rhizobia is a bacteria. that's naturally found in the soil. If you're using a soil that's already inoculated, a lot of starter mixes are, then you don't have to worry about it. But if you're growing specific things like wild lupine, right, you want to make sure that there is that bacteria in there because they form relationships as soon as that seed has sprouted. The secret sauces, I'll just talk about those. Just keep it clean when you're starting seeds. I use hydrogen peroxide on everything, especially when I do cold stratification. When I put the seeds in a bag with a little bit of water, I always add hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide causes the seeds to swell and to absorb more moisture right away. It also takes care of any viruses that could be on the outside of the seed and makes the, I mean, I haven't had mold cold stratifying yet, so do as you want, but I just really like, I use hydrogen peroxide for everything. Cinnamon's also fabulous. It is a natural antifungal. So if you start seeds and you start to see that green stuff growing on the top of your soil, you could get dampening off, but if you've already placed cinnamon, then usually you don't get that. There's 1,000,001 ways to start a seed. You can do soil blocking, seed trays, use the strawberry containers that you have left over, hydroponics, aquaponics, I mean, you name it, everybody would tell you there's a perfect way to start a seed. It's whatever you gardeners would like. But recommendation is try to use a soilless media. Don't use compost and don't use the soil from your backyard. Those can have seeds in them, weed seeds that you don't want to germinate. It'll often be too heavy if you use it in a pot, and could carry some soil-borne diseases as well. The packages, if you do buy commercial seed starting mix, read for porosity. Usually seed starting mixes, they're all pretty much the same. And some have starter nutrients or mycorrhiza, like I mentioned before. Those are all great. Some amendments you can add. You can use peat or core, perlite. I use vermiculite a lot. Again, you can sprinkle it all over the tops of your seeds to help with that moisture. Worm castings are great, but we're thinking like a plant. When a plant is in its seed form, all the energy the plant needs to germinate is in that seed, right? There's a lot of fat in there. When it gets its first set of true leaves, then it's running out of energy reserves. That's when you'd add the fertilizer in your soilless media or plant them out. So you don't need starter nutrients. It's great for the lazy gardener that can't get to planting them out right away. Same thing with worm castings. There's been studies done that it helps them build defenses to diseases and helps them build stronger root structure. So you can use them, it's not necessary. Any questions? Sorry, I feel like I'm running through these fast. Okay, so we've identified the plant that we wanted. We watched it. It went to seed. We collected the seed. We cleaned the seed off. And now we're trying to grow the seed and we want to share it with our friends and we want to make sure that it actually grows for them too. You could go through some pretty basic testing. So the paper towel test or the Tupperware test. Tupperware test is more for seeds that need light to germinate. So you just grab a couple pieces of paper towel, put them in the bottom of a Tupperware that are damp, not wet, and then go ahead and seal that up and then just count the seeds that are germinating and wait until all the viable seeds have germinated. Then you'll have your percentage. Same thing with the paper towel test. You can put a paper towel on there, dampen it, not soaking, moisten as needed, keep an eye on it. And you can also do this with soil. You can just plant them straight into your soil and do a germination test that way. Just when they do come up from the soil, cut the tops of them off so that way it doesn't steal energy from the other ones. There's no competition and you can keep a really accurate count. But this is if you really want to get serious about your seed collecting. And I wish you do, and I hope you do, because the industry needs seeds so desperately, especially Florida native seeds. For me, especially North Florida native plants. I come into the dilemma all the time if I'm buying plants from growers that are more southern from me. Is that a true North Florida plant? No, it's not the same ecotype. We have 3, 4 different grow zones in Florida. That's a big difference for plants. So if you want to collect your own seeds and you want to take this venture on, you can go through ayahuasca. You can get your seeds certified, and then there is a guide for it, the ayahuasca guide. It has it on record where those seeds are, and they'll do all the lab testing for you. It's not free, but it's a process. So if you have an abundance of something that deserves to be preserved, especially for restoration projects, they're just dying for seed. I really urge you to collect your seed. I'll be the first one to buy them, I'll tell you that. A lot of my seeds come from the Panhandle, which I'm like, that's still another zone. That's 8A. It's tough. But some helpful resources, I'm sure you all know as being members. These are some great ones that you can look forward to. All right, so I feel like I went through that kind of fast. Does anybody have any questions about seed starting or collecting? She went fast, so.
I was just wondering how long that fermentation process.
It's about 1 to 3 days. Like you'll see the mold start to, on the top. That's when you want to start rinsing the seeds, going through the decanting process.
So how long would it take overall?
I'd say it could be from 1 day,
Okay.
depending on the temperature. Like if you're home as well or outside, it could be 1 day or it could be 5 days. But it's not an overly long process, no. You can do it with like tomato seeds too, like vegetable seeds that you collect. But for beautyberry, for instance, is a good one.
Yeah, I was going to say one technique that I've used, which probably isn't scalable, but for wet seeds, is wait until the birds eat them.
Yeah.
And poop them out. And like if they're over your driveway or your patio or something, then you can come by and scoop up all the
Mystery poop, I love it.
yeah.
It's a lot of fun to see what comes up.
Worked for me with Florida Privet.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
For scarification with like sandpaper, do you only have to scarify like one side of the seed, or do you have to do the whole seed?
You really just want to break that outer coat, and that's the mission of it. So you can even nick it with fingernail clippers, sandpaper. You'll start to see where that seed coat ends, and what is it, the endocarp or the mesocarp on the inside? You'll see a little bit of a difference. So it's really, if you can just puncture that seed coat that allow water to go in, that's what you want.
Okay, so you don't have to do like the whole entire outer coating?
No,
Okay.
no, just one little spot, and
Okay.
and you don't have to disintegrate the seed, just enough to allow water in.
Okay.
Yeah, and then water and hydrogen peroxide if you need to soak it. It's the best.
How much hydrogen peroxide do you put in, what's the ratio?
I would say 1 to 10, or 10 to 1 rather. So 10 parts water, 1 part hydrogen peroxide, just 3%. I usually do by the 10% because I use it so often. And then I really water it down, but typical household, 3% hydrogen peroxide, 10 to 1 ratio, you're good to go.
And what does it do?
So it does a couple of things. So it kills viruses on the outside of the seeds, kills any bacteria that might be in your situation. So it keeps it clean. That's first and foremost. Secondly, there's been studies showing that it does help the seeds swell. So it helps them take up water faster. And if you're propagating via water, always add a peroxide, or you can even add bleach, and then it's for the same reasons. So.
And can I see the slide for this with the other contacts that you had?
Yes, ma'am. It's totally is off FNPS website, so that's what they recommend as well.
So I have a question from the Zoom.
Great.
Someone wants you to go through the steps of the beautyberry seed process.
Okay.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so first you're going to extract the berries, right? You're probably gonna get a screen and just smush them. You really just wanna separate the fleshy outer coat of the beautyberry from the seed inside. And then you can rinse it and you can soak it and just let it sit for a day or two, remove any mold that forms. Then after, if there is a mold that forms, you just rinse them and rinse them and rinse them and allow them to dry. That's pretty much summed up without putting the fancy terms on it. But it's separating the seed from the fleshy parts, yes.
I'm also curious what color the seeds should be.
For beautyberry?
For the beautyberry, yeah.
Oh, I think they're dark brown.
They're purple, right?
Are they purple? Well, I mean, it would make sense,
Oh,
but
after they're
when they're dry,
dry, right.
yeah. I've never done beautyberry because it's intimidating to me, but I'll propagate it.
Yeah, I think usually when I propagate them, they've been dry,
Yeah,
but I think you can also separate the seeds.
right. Yep, for sure. I think we're having up first, yeah.
When you are germinating, what media are you using? A seed starting mix, or do you ever use native soils in any instance?
The only time I'll use native soils is when I'm putting seeds out direct sow. I never put native soils in containers because again, it can carry weed seeds. It's typically much too heavy, holds too much water. It's not ideal. I have messed around with making my own seed starting mix a bazillion times. It's more beneficial for me at this point to buy seed starting mix. I like Sun Grow. I think they're a pretty good brand, but I'm not telling you to go buy them. Any brand will do. I do tend to find that Pro Mix, when it dries out, it's dried out. It doesn't have as good of a surfactant in it as the Sun Grow does, but those are pretty readily available, ones that I like. But honestly, you can make your own too, just using the amendments that I had listed, so.
So, sorry, as you grow on, are you then potting up into larger potting soil in case of like retail?
Yes.
So at no point do you ever incorporate native soils into?
No, no, and I've tried to do that, and honestly, they don't grow as well. It is a task to mimic native soil in pots. I mix a lot of different things, and I've experimented with a lot of different things. For instance, sandy soils I replace with pine bark. I'm not saying this is the way to do it. This is the way I found to do it. I've tried sand, like for humostrata, for instance. It's just very heavy, and it doesn't allow for that airflow. Perlite and vermiculite are great additives. Vermiculite more so for moisture-loving plants. There's a million ways to go about it. It's kind of the gardener's choice, you know?
So I'm gonna be really ignorant here. So potting soil versus seed starting soil, those are two different things.
Yeah, so potting soil and garden soil and seed starting soil, it is. There's a lot of options. So seed starting soil has no nutrients in it. It's a soilless media, they call it. And you don't need it when you're starting seeds, again, because the seed has a lot of energy already stored in there. You want to start adding fertilizer when the seeds get like 4 to 6 inches, has its first 1 to 2 sets of true leaves.
When you say add fertilizer, are you talking about, liquid fertilizer?
You can, or you can put it into really good potting soil, and there you go. It's going to have access to the nutrients it needs. Or you can plant it outside, then it will find the nutrients it needs. So it's whatever you're going.
Not in my yard.
Well, that's even better, because then make them struggle, and then they'll be stronger in the long run.
When you sow your seed in September through November or whatever, are you just sprinkling them on top of the media, or are you putting them into a kind of?
So I am doing them in the fridge. I cold stratify everything in the fridge just because I need to ensure that I'm going to have germination. There's too many variables that could happen outside on this scale with this amount of seed. So for me, it's easier to put them in the fridge. I know that they actually went through that cold period in case we had a really warm winter or a really wet winter, and then they start trying to germinate and it's the wrong time of year. Like, at least I have a little more control over it. If you want to do it at home, then yes, you could sprinkle them over, a flat if you wanted to. You could put them in individual growing containers, however you want to do it. That's absolutely fine. It's just for me at this scale, I start them in the fridge. So I don't know if that helps answer your question.
So once you get them started, how do you plant them or put them in a pot? Do you individually poke them into like the?
Yeah, so it depends on how I started them. Sometimes I'll just take a 10 by 20 and put soil in it. And if I have a lot of seeds, like for instance, grasses, because then you can separate grasses pretty easily and then put them, a good chunk of grasses in each pot. So for grasses, for instance, I don't use the smaller start ones, but I'm also figuring out that could change tomorrow. There's some things I'm like, I should have grown it that way and not this way. So it's a learning process. But yeah, you can, it's, whatever you can think of, you can probably start them like that.
But you don't, I'm sorry, you germinate it in the refrigerator, you don't do the
Cold stratification.
but you
Yes.
germinate after you take it.
Yes, sorry. Yes. And when you do take them out of the fridge, know that they're ready to go. Don't leave them hanging out. They're ready. Maybe they've already germinated in the fridge. Like, it's good to keep an eye on them. But they are ready. So be ready.
So if you wanna direct seed in, say, the end of November,
Yes.
you're saying 45 days before you're gonna cold stratify?
No. If I'm going to direct seed out in the fall, I'm only going to do site prep.
Okay, you're not gonna,
Right. So site prep would start months, ideally a year before, because weeds will always beat out perennials. And invasive species will always beat out perennials. So if you want a traditional meadow that's been sown and you know exactly what's in it, then it's solarization, it's smothering,
right,
it's herbicide, it's those steps, and then you're letting the weeds come up, and it's doing it over again, letting the weeds come up, doing it over again, not disturbing the soil in the meantime, then sowing. And then hopefully by the spring you'll have a beautiful flower garden. But as much as I'd love to just go throw them out, you might get a couple, but to get like the desired effects of having a mass planting of starting a meadow, you have to do the site prep. Any other questions? Yes,
I just
Mr.
wanted
Heck.
to thank you for bringing up using local ecotypes.
Yes.
Because that's really important. And I feel like a lot of the native nurseries that you hear about really don't talk about that
Right.
or
I-
even care. So I think it's really important because those plants are, they're, from here, evolved here, and they're much better suited for here.
Absolutely, and wildlife is much better suited for it. Yes, is global warming happening where southern Florida plants will probably thrive here? Yes, but we need to preserve what we had or what we have. And it's very easy. It's kind of like the gardener's dilemma or the ethical dilemma is, for instance, I cannot find purple cone flowers. If anybody has purple cone flowers that are North Florida ecotype, be happy to get them from you. It's tough. The crossbreeding and what point as people should we allow genetic manipulation of these species? I don't know. You can go down a whole wormhole of it, but to stay true to the type of plants that are here and support the wildlife that's here, we really should be using, if not Florida ecotype, local ecotype as much as we can. But it's very difficult. I feel the pressure on that. So start collecting seeds, everyone. Please.
but a lot of the seeds we may have are, I drive 3 hours to get native plants.
Right.
So,
So they're probably not North Florida ecotype. And it's not a problem per se. And I deal with it too, because a lot of plants that I can't grow everything. I try, but I can't do it. So I'll have to get them probably from the same nursery as you do. So then you think about it, they're supplying the genetic material for most of Florida if every nursery is going there. So that's why it's really important for seed collectors, especially Florida seed collectors and North Florida seed collectors, so we can get our hands on this material to grow it and restore what's there. That's just my thoughts on it. It's not the authority by any means.
So you said this is a good time for spring seeds and then throughout the season or maybe
For collecting?
until the fall? Yeah, for collecting.
You can collect any time of year. There's always something going to seed. There's always something flowering, if you look hard enough. But any time of year, just go out and, like I said, find a flower that you like. Find something that you like and just watch it, see what happens. And then go from there. It's all about observations.
Have you had much luck with public land managers allowing seed collection?
I have not tried yet. There is a spot that I've been watching near my nursery that I'd really like to get to. They have a lot of liatris. And it's on my to-do list like a million other things, and that's why I feel like I need to hire a seed collector, right? So that would be glorious. So no, I have not done that avenue yet.
I'm just curious because I think, sometimes they require like, agreements or legal documents or something.
They do. So especially if it's not invasive, endangered or threatened species, you have to go through a process of getting them. And then you have to have a certain permit for them. It's pretty involved, and it's for each one. It's not like I want to go to this site and collect what's there. You need to know the species, where it is, and it can get pretty detailed. So I don't want to deter you from doing it. Just wanted to, there are some obstacles, and I think that's another issue. So.
Is that it?
Well, I did want to thank everybody here very much for allowing me to come speak. This is kind of like a full circle moment for me. It's an honor to speak in front of you today because I've learned so much from the Florida Native Plant Society, and I wouldn't be here today without everybody. So thank you very much, and it's been an honor. And if you ever have any questions or if you want some free plants and feel like potting some plants, I could use the help. So I'll pay you in plants. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, there's seats there for sale. There's also more food. Hang out if you want, because we're here till 8 o'clock.
Do you know what I know, it's really random. What is mostly Saturday nights and mornings, but that's summer hours that are going to be changing. Yeah, but it's also a great mix. And walking my army, I can also move around the same time you can. So like, how am I gonna get to know these plants? Like, that's, you know, it's say, let's go. Yes. But I've been on Zoom mostly, like I haven't been to any like in-person meetings, but I've been watching. Following up on YouTube, videos. I mean, it's great. So are you in Jacksonville? Yeah, we live in like the Manor area, so. I knew it's far. Yeah. I recognize that one's far. But I'm lazy now. Driving 45 minutes is no big deal. Now if I drive like 15, I'm like, oh, really far. From Mass? When I was in Massachusetts, it'd be like Madison. But we were in like, I don't know, it was like, okay, yeah, it's just like a lot of everything. Like this little suburb, and then I'm like, I have to like track. Yeah, no, I was right on the border of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, so it was like, also, if you want to go anywhere, you're driving 30 minutes. Yeah. Well, thank you. And that's what what is I don't know. Yeah, so you can buy like commercially made mixes that have a lot of different strengths. My garage out ton. I've heard this. Some of them are rip-offs. So yeah. Honestly, I have really good luck with Goodwin and Baptista Alba, and they're the same area. They need the same things for me. Honestly, just the first seed starting mix that has mycorrhiza in it, and the bigger name ones will. Yeah. Well, it's good you can inoculate your seeds with it too. So, honestly, if you look up the type of rhizobia it needs, you can probably get it real cheap for like a pea mix. You want to call it that? I probably have change for you now. But
I don't think I need change. I think it's.
so there's a lot of different strains that are very specific to certain plants. They might throw in one for orchids. Like I don't need one.
Because it's 77 and.
So this one's not. This one, the bigger one.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Are these all the same? Or are they different?
So these ones are bigger. These ones are grand, and then these ones are smaller. And all of it is like I have these ones are yeah. Sorry, I just didn't. Maybe not. They're just separate. I just use it for both.
Then I had to go get more.
Oh, it's fine. Just it's going back to the. It'd be 23, so. Whatever. Do you want a bag?
Thank you very much.
Hope you learned something.
My wife's the native plant.
Yeah.
You know, what do you want me to do now? But I learned a lot.
Oh, good. Because, you know, it is a subject that gets talked about a lot. And so I was like, all right, hopefully I can bring something to someone that learn something. I'm glad. Thank you, sir.
You know, there was a lot of the stuff we just didn't have. So it was just like, I don't even process.
Yeah. To go with me. I stress researching it, but you know how many times actually like in the moment I'm like, I don't know what happens. Oh my gosh, that was great. Yeah. What did I do again? Thank you very much. You're welcome. Thank you. What did you get? Perfect. Thank you very, very much. I didn't think ahead for myself. Our 10% going back to appreciate No, that's when you like to start. After you get that, depending on the species you grow here, maybe like sunflowers. I just cut all mine back to it's a common practice. Yeah. I just meant when you start to see the various that's when it's going to start. The soil is not getting start usually happens with sunlight, so it's email me, I'm there every day, but I'm just trying to get it done before my kids get us. So, I'm there and we're happy to share plans for this. You know, when she's on Yes. Is that on your property? No. Yes. One called Bear Tree? No, is that over Right now, so the place that I'm renting to grow everything and my plant stand has a lot of scrubby plants. And I've been watching them, like I just had ladies come up, so it was fun. Last year I had a ton of blazing stars. I just didn't so I just didn't select them. But I want some green like for my yard, I want them somewhere. I have
She also get in there. She's working with you.
Well, that's right, so we're off to
We might need one. He's so close to my
That's true, that's It was easy. Like, so this smart TV, like,
what she, a lot of senators I do like the fact that they are restoring. Oh, yeah.
Hey, you did great. Yeah.
Of course, love any feedback. I'm terrible at presentations.
Is that, how many presentations have you done? 4?